So, Baruch Hashem, we're here to learn, the first time learning the Derech Mitzvosecha in our 9-10 years of learning. I remember years ago, Yoini is not here yet, but he asked to learn something from the Tzemach Tzedek. Well, the day has come that we're about to start learning something from the Tzemach Tzedek. Let me just give a brief introduction. The Tzemach Tzedek was Rebbe Nachum Mendel of Lubavitch. I believe he was named after Rebbe Nachum Mendel of Vitebsk, the Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe. When the Baal Shem Tov, when the Maggid passed away, he instructed Rebbe Mendel of Vitebsk, who was also known as Rebbe Mendel Horedoker from Horedok. I guess he lived in Horedok and he lived in Vitebsk. Rebbe Nachum Mendel, who authored the Sefer Pri Haaretz, which you could still learn today, and we have it. He and Rabbi Avram Kalisk of Kalisk were the two appointed students of the Maggid who were to take over his position. They decided to make Aliyah, and it took Hasidim with them, and they left over the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, for the region called Rysen, Belarus, White Russia. When I was growing up, it was called White Russia. The grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek, through his daughter, Rebbetzin Dvorah Leah, not through his son, Reb Dovber, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, but through his daughter, Dvorah Leah, had a child, and they called him Menachem Mendel, hence Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, the first Menachem Mendel, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. And just for the record, his father's name was Sholem Shachner, Tzemach Tzedek's father. So his father was not a Chabad Rebbe, but it's through his mother. And there are stories, why he became Rebbe, but right away he was recognized as a child prodigy. And he spent time with his Zayda, with the Alter Rebbe, and so much so that the Maamorim in Likutei Torah and Torah Or, which we have as the kind of foundational Maamorim of the Balatanya, were chosen by him, by the grandson, which Maamorim should go into that Sefer. Because the Alter Rebbe said thousands of Maamorim throughout his year. Today, Baruch Hashem, I think most of them are already printed because the Rebbe gave instructions in the 1980s to start printing the Maamorim of the Alter Rebbe. So we have like 20 volumes almost of every year of the Alter Rebbe's leadership of Maamorim that he said. The Likutei Torah and the Torah Maamorim are different in the sense that the Tzemach Tzedek are the ones who chose those Maamorim to put it into a Sefer attributed to his grandfather for the public. So there's a difference between the Alter Rebbe's Maamorim, as he said them yearly, and the Maamorim that are in the Likutei Torah, are chosen by the Tzemach Tzedek. And the fact is that for 225 years, the Lubavitcher Hasidim study Likutei Torah every Shabbos and throughout the week. We don't study the Alter Rebbe's Maamorim. I recall a letter where the Rebbe writes to the Nissen Emenov, the known Chabad Mashpia in France, in Brunois, who was a Mashpia and a special refined Jew. And the Rebbe says to him, I think this was in 1952, in conjunction with the Rebbe's birthday, he says to him in the letter with great joy, the new Maamorim of the Alter Rebbe were printed. Now we have something new to learn, because the Rebbe, everything that came out, he put his hands on. He learned everything. So he tells Reb Nissen, we have all I'm paraphrasing. We have all the oldies, the reruns. Chas v'sholom to say on Torah reruns, but that idea, and here we have something new, a davar chodesh. So get yourself excited. So who was the one who chose the Maamorim in Likutei Torah? It was the Tzemach Tzedek. So this is a very significant point. People don't put any much thought into it, but that shows you what kind of quality person he was, to rely on him, the grandson of the Alter Rebbe. In other words, look, the Mittler Rebbe didn't do that. The son of the Alter Rebbe didn't do that. For whatever reason, he didn't do that. That means that during the time of the Mittler Rebbe, we didn't have the, I assume the Likutei Torah, not I assume, no, we didn't have it published. It was only the Tzemach Tzedek, the grandson, who did it. So it just shows you that not only was he significant in his own right as a third Lubavitcher Rebbe, which we'll talk soon about a little more, but also the way he took his grandfather's Chassidus and made it possible for the greater public is very significant till today. So when we talk about 7 Rebbes and we talk about our Rebbe, the last Rebbe, etc., right, you don't hear much out there about the previous ones, surely not the Tzemach Tzedek. Another point, the Rebbe, when he would review Maamarim on Shabbos, the 42 years that he said Hasidic Maamarim on Shabbos and Yom Tov and Yud Kislev and Yud Shvat and Yud Beis Tammuz, there were periods in which he reviewed Maamarim that just came out in print from different Rebbes. So there was a time when the Maamarim that Tzemach Tzedek were coming out, I think in the 1960s, and the Rebbe would review them every time he said a Maamar. Then there was a period when the Maamarim, the Marash, the 4th Rebbe, was coming out, because they were all in manuscript form. So it took a staff to put it together and to publish it. He started to say Maamarim of the Rebbe Marash, with his own insights, of course, but based primarily on that Rebbe of the time. So that's another interesting point. Now, this Sefer, Derech Mitzvosecha, you see that under it, it says, Taimei HaMitzvahs, the reason for mitzvahs. So there's 2 names to the Sefer, Taimei HaMitzvahs, to the Tzemach Tzedek, or Derech Mitzvosecha. I think the Rebbe usually called it Taimei HaMitzvahs of the Tzemach Tzedek. I'm not sure when he spoke about it in public if he really called it Derech Mitzvosecha for some reason. I mean, some have a thought that the first time that the Derech Mitzvosecha, which are the Tzemach Tzedek's Maamarim explanations of mitzvahs, which makes it a very unique Sefer, and by the way, not just in Chabad, this is studied in other Hasidic groups too, where you have Chassidus, Kabbalah, but Chassidus on mitzvahs, explaining mitzvahs. It's a very unique thing. It's something that talks to people. Tefillin, Mezuzah, Ahavas Yisrael, and you'll see as much as we cover in the Sefer. It's very, very tasty, right? You have a deeper understanding of what mitzvah you're doing. Not only the halachic reasons, the mechanical reasons, but you have the spiritual insights, mystical insights, better said, into the mitzvahs. It was printed in 1911 by a Jew named Rabbi Bechovsky. Rabbi Bechovsky was not a follower of the 4th Lubavitcher Rebbe, but one of the other sons. The Tzemach Tzedek had 7 boys. One of them died, Yaakov died in teenhood, and he was left with 6 others. The oldest one, which our Rebbe is a great-great-grandson of, Reb Baruch Sholem, didn't want to be a Rebbe. So you left with 5 that became Rebbes. One of them was the Rebbe who parked himself in Liadi, where the Alter Rebbe came, after Lozhne, he went to Liadi. So he went back there. His name was Reb Chaim Shneir Zalman. And he had Chassidim. There was another one that went to the town of Kapish. And they settled there. And he became the biggest at the time of all the 5 other sons with Chassidim. He became the largest. Kapish, not Lubavitch. The youngest son, the Rebbe Marash, Reb Shmuel, the 4th Rebbe, our 4th Rebbe, he became the Rebbe in Lubavitch. Because his second brother, Reb Yehuda Leib, known as the Maril, passed away 6 months after the Tzemach Tzedek passed away. He was instructed by the Tzemach Tzedek in the will to stay in Lubavitch, but he was a very, very abstract type of person. And when he returned, when the Tzemach Tzedek passed away, he was in Ukraine, in Kremenchuk. And he came back after Pesach. He came back, and the Beis Rebbe, the one who documents a lot of this, writes that he saw a fire burning. What do you mean, saw a fire burning? He saw, unfortunately, fighting amongst Chassidim. And the fighting was between the Lubavitcher Chassidim and the Koppishter Chassidim. And he couldn't tolerate it. It wasn't for his, so he left. He left Lubavitch to his son, who was already in Koppis. Reb Shlomo Zalman Schneerson, the first Koppishter Rebbe, I think in Baltimore, Hillel knows someone who's been putting out his Maamorim from the Koppishter, right? So that's that side of Chabad. Anyway, 6 months later he passed away. That's the story. You could figure it out or play or say whatever you want, but that's the fact. 6 months later, he was passed, and he was supposed to be with the youngest son. Notice the Tzemach Tzedek did not say who should be Rebbe, that who should replace him in Lubavitch to be Rebbe. He didn't say that. He just instructed that his oldest son, that already had Chassidim, Reb Yehuda Leib, his second to the oldest son, and the youngest son should remain in Lubavitch, and they did, and he didn't, because he felt the fighting was too much. He doesn't want to be part of it, and he left to his son. He passes away 6 months later. Who then is left in Lubavitch? The youngest son, their Marash. The person who printed the first time the Derech Mitzvosecha in 1911 was a Ladi Kopisher Chassid. He wasn't a Chassid of the Marash. Now that was very problematic for the Lubavitcher Chassidim. They were very upset because, from their perspective, you need permission from our Rebbe to print Chassidus of a Rebbe, of a Tzemach Tzedek, who gave him permission. So they said, well, we need your permission? He said, I'm not your chassid. I'm a chassid of this other, of another brother. Well, it didn't go down well. The fact is, it was printed, and the fact is that it is so desirable to learn, because to understand the mitzvahs, the mystical meaning of mitzvahs, that I heard that even in Lubavitch, in the yeshiva of Lubavitch, where the Koppishter was a taboo. They were very upset with the Koppishter movement. They would learn this, but they would tear out the page which says printed by Rabbi Bechovsky, because they didn't want to have any association with him, but they wanted the Maamorim. You just think of this. You talk. This is like 120 years or so. I'm talking about 1911 to today. And these antics happen then, it happens today. And today, I would say it happens less, because I don't know how it's by you guys over there, but Shemesh over there with the protests and all the stuff going on there.
I've heard that it happens by people who read Sefer Lubavitch with the title page Melech HaMashiach, that they take out that page.
Okay, but that's... I hear you. I wouldn't make that comparison. Because here you're talking about Tzadiki Olam. You're not talking about... you're talking about the Chassidim. You're talking about the Chassidim tearing out. Okay. That's all I'm trying to say. I don't tear anything out. I'm not from those that tear anything out. I don't agree with printing that, but But anyway, let's not get off on a tangent. So the Derech Mitzvosecha, I'm just pointing out to you, is a very unique Sefer. It's a very beautiful Sefer. And when was it printed? When did the Tzemach Tzedek write it? So the our Rebbe writes that he approximates it was written between 1814 and 1828. Tzemach Tzedek lived to 1866. That means he was a young man. Could you imagine? A young man should be able to write such a Sefer of Kabbalah and Chassidus. Amazing, really amazing. One other thing, the Rebbe encouraged Rabbi Yoel Kahn by Mashpia, I believe, when he became a Mashpia in 1954, and he had Yechidus with the Rebbe, and he asked the Rebbe, what should you learn with the students? So the Rebbe said, Tanya and Derech Mitzvosecha, and Taima mitzvahs. So we in yeshiva, the way it worked is, in the first time we started Hasidus, we learned Derech Mitzvosecha, this Sefer, some of it, the easier Maamarim, relatively speaking, the ones that are a little less Kabbalistic, that has less Kabbalah in it. And then we went on to Maamarim of the Rebbe Rashab. But know that this isn't just, for beginners. On the contrary, this is deep stuff, but there's different ways of learning it. So I want to use the style of just covering ground, and this way, because if we analyze every line or two, we won't get anywhere. And there will be Kabbalah, and I'm not going to go into the Kabbalah. I'm not teaching Kabbalah. I want to teach the Hasidus. Any questions before we begin? So we'll start. Anything?
Yeah, Rabbi, just one question.
Yes. Yoini, you weren't online. Yoini, you weren't online. I told everyone that I'm paying back a debt to you. You remember, 9 years ago, you said, why don't we learn something from the Tzemach Tzedek? You don't remember, and I remember. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Go ahead.
So when the Tzemach Tzedek was nifter, was there a split between the sons?
Yes.
Meaning,
yes.
When you said it, where they didn't carry on Lubavitch?
They all were Lubavitch, but Lubavitch was the name of the town, right? Chabad is the philosophy, right? They all were Chabad, but they moved to different cities. So one was in Yezhin, one was in Ladi, one was in Kapust, one was in Lubavitch, and I think, and the other one went to Avruch.
There was one named Nachman, right?
No.
No?
No. There's no name Nachman in Chabad. I mean, the Alter Rebbe through Rebbe Yitzchak Baditcher, I think, might have been related somehow, but no. Anyway, so when I want to say when you say split, it's not as though it's not as though they hate each other. They just each one had Chassidim, and that's it. And the question was, later with manuscripts and property, and they had a din Torah, and they had 3 Rabbanim, and they paskined. And once they accepted the agreement, they went on. Everyone went on. So it wasn't. So basically, it was all Chabad, and that's one of the reasons, Chavre, why Chabad is the largest in numbers. It's not even a question than any other Hasidic group of the Russian groups. I'm not talking today also, but I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about last 150 years, 200 years from Tzemach Tzedek on. Because that's not only did Tzemach Tzedek have 100,000 Hasidim, it says, but his sons had Hasidim. They were all Chabad. So basically that whole region in Russia was all Chabad. Then when you went over to Lithuania, you had Litvaks. You had Chabad too, but mainly Litvaks. But in Russia, it was heavily Chabad. Then you had Karlin Stolin, you had Breslev, Chernobyl, but because of all the sons, and they were teaching Hasidus. Now, so I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that Chernobyl didn't have, Rebbes. They did. Like my father is from Romania, and which borders a section over there where there was Chernobyl Rebbes, Boyaner Rebbes, but they were all like a small, say it wasn't like Rabbi Yisrael Ruzhner, the holy Ruzhner, like the big Rebbe. They all took little places. So I think if we to do a study, and I haven't seen a study, but if we do a study on this thing, it would be clear. I think I once told you there's a Sefer that I have here called Ha'ach. Ha'ach was a journal that in the Lubavitch Yeshiva they put out in 1911 to 1914, I believe. And it was geared towards the brother, the child, the brother and sister of those that are studying in Yeshiva. And it was twofold. One was to encourage the boys to go to learn and to come learn in Lubavitch Yeshiva. The other thing was those that don't go should, give money and support the yeshiva. It's a fascinating publication. in Hebrew and in Yiddish. And in the back, Rabbi Gurari, Elchanan Gurari, who's the Rabbi Rashi of Chulon today, Rabbi Gurari, he reprinted it, but he also reprinted it with an index of all the names mentioned in the monthly publications of the children who gave money for ha'ach. And it's very fascinating to look at the names, because I found over there some Litvische names. But what's also very fascinating is there's like 10,000 names. Most of them we do not know today who they are. So again, I'm not saying all were Chabad, but most were associated with Chabad, 10,000. So it's clear to me that Chabad was like rampant all over the place in Greater Russia, USSR, whatever you call it. It was, and people were sending in. You take a look at those names, and again, we won't recognize today most of the names. Let's say Rabbi Kamenetsky, Rabbi Yankel Kamenetsky. You have a name Kamenetsky over there for Dolinov. Rabbi Yankel Kamenetsky came from Dolinov. So it could be it's him or a cousin of his. Now he happens to have Lubavitch ancestry in his family. So, but the point is that I'm just supporting what I said before. Anyway, let's learn a few minutes over here, this begin, and we'll continue tomorrow more. Iser, page 20, Chof Ches, Koyach, page Koyach, in the regular Tzemach Tzedeks. I don't have the lessons in yet. Maybe I'll get it, but not right. I don't have it. Iser Sinas Yisrael, there's a prohibition to hate another Jew. Kama, mitzvah Ahavas Yisrael. And it's a mitzvah to love another Jew. So there's 2 points here. One is to hate, and one is to love. Let's see what he says. This is in Parshas Kedoshim. So right away he gives you the mitzvah where it is in Parshas Kedoshim. Shelei lisnoi lechaveri. The Torah says, do not hate your friend. Shenemar, it says, lisisnes achicha bilvavcha. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Yeah. Weiter. Now, it says here, Reish Lamed Ches. This is mitzvah 238. One more point. The Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe writes, he doesn't know why, does not list the mitzvahs in the order of the Rambam or the Smag, Sefer Mishnah Gedolah, Sefer Smag. The Smag, the one who wrote the Smag, has minyan mitzvahs. It doesn't follow that order. The Rebbe doesn't know why, but this he writes is the mitzvah 238. Okay. Lo yav kol adam, to love every Yid, mi Yisrael, every Jew. Shenema v'afta l'reach kamecha, you should love your friend as yourself. It gives the source, Vayikra Yutes, Pasuk Yudches. Reish Mem Gimel. That's already the mitzvah of Reish Mem Gimel. So we have 2 mitzvahs here. Mitzvah Reish Lamed Ches, not to hate, and Mitzvah Reish Mem Gimel 243, to love. Yodua, go ahead. What?
Their list, that's from the list of the Sefer Achinuch.
That's right. Thank you. I meant to say that right. So he's following Sefer Achinuch. Correct. Very important that you said that. But again, that doesn't explain why he doesn't follow the order with the Rambam or the Smag have, which are the, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Yadua Maamar Hillel Azakin, it's known, the saying, the teaching of Hillel Azakin, Hillel the elder. Lahageir, to the Geir, to the convert, to the modern Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph, page 31. The Alecha, Sani, Lechavrach Leisabit, right? The Geir comes, I teach him the whole Torah on 1 foot, and he says, the whole Torah on 1 foot. What you don't like, what you despise, Lechavrach Leisabit, don't do to your friend. Zeu kol ha-Torah kula. That's the entire Torah. V'idach, and the rest of the Torah, Pirushahu, is just an explanation, an elaboration, a clarification of that one mitzvah, of that one concept. Finished. Comes along, so that's, yeah. Comes along, the Tzemach Tzedek over emes ain't a movement. And he asks the questions truthfully. Emes ain't a movement. It's not understood. Kol kach. Kol kach. It's not that understood. Why? The hotenach, the word is hotenach. It would be correct if you would say b'mitzvah shemein adam lechaveirei. If you would say this comment about mitzvahs between man and man, it makes sense. You don't like to hurt yourself, don't hurt other people. Avo mitzvah shemein adam lemokaim, but regarding mitzvahs between you and Hashem, my omerle, what did he tell him? The Ger says, teach me all of Torah. All of Torah includes mitzvahs bein adam lemokom and mitzvahs bein adam lechaveirei, both. So he says, what you don't like doing to your friend, what you don't like doing to yourself, don't do to your friend. What does that have to do with God? That's the question. Very simple, clear question, right? Okay. Befrat, he adds more specifically, Sheba Yisborich Ksiv, it says about Hashem, Im Tzodakto, if you do righteous, good, Matiten loy, what is Hashem, what do you give to God? Hashem needs your righteousness. Ki Yadua, as is known, the concept over here. Rabbi Yoel, when he teaches this, he would say he doesn't understand what the Tzemach Tzedek is adding. What is the befrat over here? How somehow the question becomes stronger by quoting this concept that what do you enhance to God? So I don't know. If Rabbi Yoel doesn't know, Chaim Dalfin doesn't know. But that's what it says. So let's move on. Hillel, if it says something in the Chabad.org interpretation, tell me if he explains it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Does he say something there? You want to read it?
Yeah. He says, what's the connection between loving one's fellow Jew and the obligation to wear tefillah and observe Shabbos or perform any of your other obligations to God?
No, that's the first question. Ubefrat. The next. Go ahead.
And then it says mitzvahs between man and man involve giving tangible good and benefit. Thus, their positive value can be readily understood. The mitzvahs between man and God, by contrast, emphasize Kabbalah's own acceptance of God's yoke, for ultimately any act performed on this material plane is insignificant in his eyes. Thus, seemingly, the mitzvahs between man and man are of a different nature than those between man and God.
Okay, so I understand. So he's bringing this point to show there's a difference between mitzvahs between man and man and God. Okay. But it doesn't really make the question stronger. It just explains the difference between man and God. Okay. I understand what's bothering Rabbi Yoel, why he's asking, why does the Tzemach Tzedek need to say this? For the essential question, this is not adding to the question. It's just adding to tell us there's a difference between man and man and God. Okay, let's go on now. It's also known when it says, we say this in the morning in the Chabad text of Tefillah, it's proper to say, I hereby accept upon myself the commandment of loving my friends as myself, because it's a very great foundation in the service of Hashem. And we need to understand the concept. So the third point he's making is, since the Arizal, that's from the Arizal. The Arizal says you should say this in the morning, accept upon myself the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael. Obviously, it's such an important thing. So you understand, the third point has nothing to do, seemingly, with the previous 2 points. The third point is going back to the beginning of the Maamar, that you're forbidden to hate another Jew, and you must love every Jew. So to this, he's saying that we need to really take a look at this. It's so significant that you're supposed to say it every single day and think about it before you begin davening. So he wants to look at the overall aspect of Ahavas Yisrael. Chevra, Mitzvah Shem, we will learn tomorrow. Zai Gesund. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.